All right, Warlock time. Warlock's an interesting class. Warlock has basically the best hero power in the game, and it's kind of surprising that in Arena, where your hero power matters a lot, right? Because it's one of the things that you're guaranteed to get with your class. It's kind of surprising that Warlock has always been so bad, or at least not. It's not always that bad. When Abyssal Enforcer was a thing, that guy was really strong. Although the offering rate on that has been halved at this point, so beyond normally what it gets, even so. Um, yeah, it's kind of been a surprise that Warlock has not been a top tier arena class for very often at all in the course of Hearthstone history. But maybe that actually changes with Journey to Ungoro, because the meta has changed very significantly. It's much more slower. It's much more value based, which are things that you think about when you think about the Warlock hero power. That said, it is losing things like Imp Gang Boss, which are a pretty big deal. It's not really replacing Imp Gang Boss with a lot of good stuff. Um, Cards like Tar Elemental work really well with Warlock, but they're neutral. You're not getting really that big of an offering bonus on them. I think a lot of the cards that you see here with the Warlock class just kind of whiff. So I don't know what to think about it. I think the meta has shifted to a place where Warlock is better, but the fact that you're losing cards like Imp Gang Boss, and they've already taken away the offering rates on excellent cards like Abyssal Enforcer, means it's not as good of a class. I think this is like making more of an argument for leading the top of the middle of the pack, right? This is the head of the peloton, as it were, behind your typical leaders, like out in the distance in front are classes like Mage, and then you have a bunch of guys kind of bunched up in the middle competing with each other for third or fourth best class. I think Warlock has a serious consideration as one of these third or fourth best classes now because of the changes to the meta, but not really because of the cards that you're being offered. So let's look at some of these cards. First off, Bloodbloom. This card's bad. There aren't a lot of big spells that you want to cheat out into play. I mean, I don't know. Normally, when I look at a card like this that lets me cast spells or cast anything with health instead of mana, I think, wow, this could be broken, right? But they're just, I mean, what am I going to cast? Karakazam? Is that really like what I'm casting on turn 2? I don't know what I'm supposed to accelerate out besides maybe like a Doom. I wouldn't mind playing a Doom off of this, but how often am I going to get a Doom in Arena? And it's just hard to have the pairing of Bloodbloom plus whatever one of these spells are, and a lot of them just aren't that impressive. If I cast like a 5-mana spell on turn 3 or 4, I'm not really impressed with what this card is doing. I think you pass on this card almost always. Maybe there's some weird thing you can do with it in Constructed, but I don't think it's for Arena. Chittering Tunneler. This card's okay. I like it. I'm going to say that this is maybe at like the bottom of Tier 1, top of Tier 2. 3/3 for 3, Battlecry, discover a spell. Spells are usually better than just normal cards. Discovering them is, when you're discovering among good things, is usually pretty good. I like this effect a lot. Dealing damage to your hero equal to its cost is a little bit awkward because, kind of like Ivory Knight, it kind of communicates what you have or what you took, right? You take some 4-cost thing and your opponent says, okay, they're going to kill a minion and destroy one of their mana crystals. You do a 5-cost thing. It's like, all right, well, it's Bane of Doom, Feeding Time, whatever. You take a 10-cost thing, like, all right, it's Doom, right? Like, you take Doom with this, and it's just not very good because they're just not going to play into Doom, and you also 8-10 to do that. I don't know. Losing the health is relevant when your health turns into cards anyways, but this guy is still very good, I think, and I think you're going to grab him most times that you see him because, small drop minions that generate value are usually pretty good. Even though you're in a class that can kind of generate its own value and cares about its life total as a value engine, I think this guy is still something you want to do, and especially considering that you've lost a lot of your early drops, right? I think a good rule of thumb for Warlock and Arena is that if you life tap on turn 3, you've lost the game. It's definitely true anytime you life tap on turn 2 and turn 3. I have never, in pretty much my entire time of playing Arena, I don't think I have ever, as Warlock, won a game in which I tapped turn 2 and turn 3, or been beaten by a Warlock that tapped on turn 2 and turn 3. It's a mythical unicorn to me. Having something to do on turn 3 besides life tapping is halfway there to not just automatically losing the game, and I think that's something you really want to do as Warlock, so I like this guy a lot. Clutch Mother Zavis. I played with this guy in Constructed. Girl? Mother, right? It's a girl. I don't know what I'm looking at here. pretty good in the discard zoo deck. In fact, something that really helps it along a lot more than even the quest does. The quest is a little bit underwhelming because your board gets cluttered with guys, and it's just not, you lose a lot even despite getting the quest off pretty easily. Anyways, great and constructed. Not very excited about it in Arena. It's hard to have the synergies where you discard this and then it's a 2-mana 4/4, and even then that's not that impressive, right? Because you're playing a more slower value game. If you play a 2-mana 4/4 on turn 4, it's not the biggest of deals, right? You got to tap and draw a card after you did it, but whatever. Just not enough synergy with discarding this to really make it work, and I'm just not really excited about this. So I think you pass on this. There's better legendaries out there. Corrupting Mist, this card's pretty interesting. This card's really good. You could talk about it for a long time. It's weird in that it's less risky than a Doomsayer, because a Doomsayer can be killed, or Kooky Chemist or something like that, right? But there's also you have to make sort of weirder plays with it, where the upside of Doomsayer was that if you played it and your opponent didn't have an answer to it, your opponent also didn't get to develop their board at all, because all that would just die to the Doomsayer as well. Here, you play this and you'll kill what your opponent has, but it also doesn't deny them the opportunity to develop their own board. And if you have a board of your own, right, they get to try and trade off whatever you have on the board with their corrupted creatures, with their creatures that are doomed. They can go after your non-doomed creatures. It does give you the option, of course, of playing creatures alongside your Corrupting Mist, right? You play Corrupting Mist and then you play creatures. But again, that's gives your opponent opportunities to trade in and do stuff. I think this card is very strong against the Tar Elemental type creatures, right? Any of these Tar creatures are pretty bad to Corrupting Mist because they just die. They don't really get much value. In fact, any of these big, they have a lot of toughness, not a lot of attack type minions, of which there's a decent number in the set, are all pretty bad to corruption, because part of the idea of those minions is that you're going to, because they have so much health, get to use them and attack with them again and again and again. If you say, okay, you need to get all your value from this minion in one turn, it's really hard to do it. So I think this card is good. I'm going to say it's bottom of tier 1, top of tier 2, this sort of thing. It's one of these borderline cards where if I took the best 30 cards from the 90 that I was offered, I might not actually pick this. I think more often than not, I'm going to pick this in my top 30 that I was offered of the 90, though. And it's a weird, awkward effect, and it's going to be hard to kind of play with, but it's a strong enough effect for just 2 mana that I like it a lot. In fact, I think part of the reason I like this more is because I like Corrupt more in this meta, right? And so just this effect is better. I don't know. I think this helps the game go long, and if the game goes longer, right, if you're able to force trades from your opponent, force them to not go face, preserve your life total, then you get there with the value, and that's the sort of thing you want to be doing with Warlock. So even though this card is a little bit awkward, I think this is a card you're gonna have in your deck whenever you see it, right? You're gonna more often than not draft this when it's one of your options. Cruel Dynamancer, I don't think this card is very good. Again, hard to make use of these Death Rattle synergies, and it's just not a good body for this mana cost, 6 mana 5/5. I mean, if you're able to get there with this discarding stuff, if you happen to draft a lot of Soulfires and Doomguards, then sure, you see this guy later and you're like, yeah, I'll go with this over some other marginal card. But otherwise, I just don't think this is very good. There just aren't enough cards that discard you cards when it comes down to it. Doomguard and Soulfire are the two that really come to mind as top tier ones, and you're not going to be able to fill a deck full of those. So I think this guy loses a lot of value. I think his 6 mana 5/5 is really underwhelming, and then I think that's mostly what you're going to be playing this guy as. So I don't think you draft this guy very often. Feeding Time. This is a spell, and it's not epic. And it's a class spell from the latest set, so you're going to see this card a lot. This is something that you're going to have 1 to 2 copies of in your deck probably. It's not super impressive. In fact, some of these removal spells that you're seeing for other classes are also not very impressive, but it's okay. 3 damage for 5 mana. Not great, but you're getting 3 1/1 Terror Daxes. This card reminds me most of Stormpike Commando, which is a 4/2 for 5, deal 2 damage. I think this card compares favorably to Stormpike Commando, and Stormpike Commando wasn't horrible. You'd play it. I think this is like a tier 2-ish card, though. If you had more freedom in your choices, you probably wouldn't put this in your deck. That said, I think this is something you want to expect your opponents to have when you're playing against Warlocks. Expect them to be able to deal 3 damage on turn 5 pretty easily. And the 1/1s actually have some synergy here with another card that we'll get into a little bit later. So maybe the card moves up a little bit the more you value that card. Lakari Fellhound. This is a bad Doom Guard. It's a 3/8 for 4, which is a great deal, but not that much. Probably a little bit worse deal than a 5/7 for 5, honestly, especially given that this has Taunt, which is kind of what you want to do, so it's not like Taunt is bad, but Charge is a better keyword, I would say. And Battlecry, discard 2 random cards, is a pretty stiff penalty. Part of the trick is that, with Doomguard, you often had a pretty good chance of only discarding 1 card or no cards with it, right? That on turn 5 or maybe turn 6 when you were looking to play this, you had already been able to play out the rest of your hand. You're not going to be able to do that with Lakari Fellhound, right? Like, you're just not by turn 4 going to be able to empty your hand, and so this card is going to be hitting your cards, and later on in the game, it's not going to have as much relevance. When your opponent finally plays like an 8/8, right? Well, when you play Doomguard, you could still trade into his 5/5 and be left with a 5/2 that your opponent has to deal with. This guy, you play him, and if your opponent has one of these big creatures on the board, they're just going to be able to clear it pretty easily without a lot of impact. This is most impactful as an early game minion, and it is doing what you want to do. A 3/8 taunt is kind of where you want to be with Warlock, right? But man, I just don't think this card is all that impressive. I just don't like this card very much. I think it's a little bit below average. I think sometimes you'll end up with it, but you won't be that happy that you ended up with it. Ravenous Pterodax. I like this card a lot, actually. When it's just a 4-mana 4/4, it's okay, right? 4-mana 4/4, not a great rate, whatever, blah. But, and when it's destroying a kind of decentish minion, like you destroy, I don't know, a leftover 2/2 or a 3/1 or something like that, it's only kind of okay, I guess. But if you're destroying like a 1/1, right? This card is pretty amazing. I'm willing to give up a 1/1 to give this guy, +3 health, +3 attack. He's a 4-mana 7/7, living the meme. You give this guy Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1s. You give this guy Stealth and Wind Fury, and then he's 8 points of damage to your opponent's face. I mean, there's a lot going on here with being able to adapt twice. And just the rate that you're starting off with of a 4-mana 4/4 is not that bad, and sacrificing a minion to adapt twice is pretty big game whenever you have a smaller minion. And again, I'm willing to sack, say, a 3/1. Let's say I have a 3/2 on the board. I use it to kill off some 1/1 of my opponents, and then I play this guy, and then he becomes like a 7/7. I'm kind of willing to accept that deal. But yeah, when you're sacking 1/1s, this guy is pretty solid, and I think there's enough 1/1s to sack with things like Feeding Time. That this guy's actually pretty good. I'm going to say that he's like tier 2-ish, moving up in my opinion, maybe like eventually to tier 1. I mean, he's still just, a lot of times you're going to be playing him and he's eating something that you didn't really want to eat, or he's just like a 4-mana 4/4, and it's not that impressive. But I think this guy, I've seen this guy be big and do what you want to do. Like, he's a 4-mana 4/7 taunt that you killed an irrelevant minion that wasn't going to do anything with, and then suddenly this guy just buys you 3 turns of not being attacked in the face or something like ridiculous like that. I've seen this guy do a lot of work. Tar Lurker. This card's also really good. 5-mana 4/7 taunt. This I guess is comparable to the 5-mana 4/7 that Battlecry, if you have 2 minions, get taunt. Nesting whatchamadoogie, I don't remember. In any case, I like this guy a little bit better than that card, because this card is very reliably going to give you taunt, and I think given what you're trying to do as Warlock, flooding the board with guys and then getting a taunt minion is less likely than just being able to play this as a taunt minion, and you don't really care that this guy doesn't really do that much on offense, because the whole point is that he's just going to hold the ground while you draw cards with your hero power and get to your late game and stuff like that. So I like this guy a lot. I think he's very strong. I think this is tier 1 card, right? This is a card you're going to want in your decks as a Warlock. And there you have it. There are all the Warlock cards. So I think the big part of the reason why Warlock is much stronger than where it was before is not necessarily the cards. Bad, pretty good, bad, pretty good, bad, decent, not very good, pretty good, right? These cards are okay-ish, but I think a large part of the reason is the shift in the meta to something slower and more attrition and value-based. And there you're going to get to use your hero power a lot, and you're going to basically get to make use of the best hero power in the game in Arena. which is where you want to be. So I think because of the shift in the meta, Warlock becomes better, and it isn't necessarily because of the cards. So take that for what you will. If you disagree with kind of how the meta is shaken out, then I think your evaluation of Warlock changes. But I like Warlock as one of these kind of up and rising classes after its fall from having Abyssal Enforcer be reduced in offering rate. On to the next class.